And welcome back to That's Politics. Our guest this morning is Carl Gallups, a pastor of a church in Milton, Florida, and evangelist, I guess you could say.
That's part of it.
Part of it. And into YouTube with a lot of videos posted, some of them very outspoken about different issues.
And talk radio host.
And talk radio host. So
Yeah.
you're used to this business here.
Yeah.
Well, you would expect me to ask you the question, your thoughts and opinions on some issues that are hitting the nation, and especially in Alabama right now, the new immigration law. And I'm sure you've seen all the reports, and you maybe talked with business people who are involved in this issue. What are your thoughts about it?
Well, let me correct myself. I don't know that I've seen all the reports, but because I have deep ties to Alabama and this interests me, and of course it's a national issue too,
Sure.
and an issue which interests me, I have been trying to inform myself. So gentlemen, if I misspeak on this issue, please correct me, because I'm certain there's something that I might not know about this issue. But from what I know, first of all, let me say, generally, I am very much in support of the Alabama immigration law. Okay, as a pastor, I've listened to some of the concerns and complaints of some of the pastors, in that they're afraid that they might lose their ability to humanely minister to some folks without having some legal repercussions. And I know that, I understand that, and I feel for that issue. I don't know exactly how Alabama is working through that, so I don't know that I can speak very authoritatively or intelligently on the inner workings of that issue. But just when it all was coming to the forefront, I sympathized with that. As a pastor, I would think, yeah, if whether someone's illegal or not, if they're hurting and in desperate need, then my heart, my Christian heart, my American heart, my human heart wants to help them, and I don't want to go to jail for it. But on the other hand, we've got to get a grip on illegal immigration. It is going to destroy this nation in many, many ways, financially and otherwise, culturally, spiritually perhaps, and those are some deep issues that we could spend hours talking about, but it really could. And all I'm asking, I think, is what all Alabama's asking, and what all that Arizona has been asking, and other states, is that for the federal government to enforce the laws that are on the books. If the federal government would enforce our immigration laws, I'm all for immigration, legal immigration. I'm all for it. This nation is a nation of immigrants. Immigrants have made this nation. I'm certain that all of my family, with the last name Gallups, it comes from German Gottlieb, and I'm in Cullman, very German. I mean, yeah. my folks came from Germany, obviously, and from Europe. So I'm all for it. But illegal immigration and all of the political maneuvering and finagling that goes with it does more than irritate me. It infuriates me. It angers me. It concerns me. And so I think Alabama's doing what Arizona and other states are now talking about doing, and I praise God for Alabama leading the way. At least they're doing something, and that is they're trying to get a grip on this thing.
You got a problem too. You got a problem with the Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court. Sometimes these people try, like Alabama's trying to do something, but sooner or later the Supreme Court will knock a lot of that down. See.
Yes, sir. And I have always had a deep issue with judicial activism, where laws are made from the bench. That's not their right or constitutional responsibility. However, I deeply admire the court system when it's administered properly to determine constitutionality of certain issues. And so, yes, there have been many times when states, and I'm a big states' rights advocate as well. I think there has to be we are the United States, so there has to be constitutional elements which unite us. I have no problem with that. I'm not an exclusionist, but on the other hand, I get very irritated when there is a federal law and the federal government will not enforce it, and it impacts directly and immediately individual states. And so the states beg the federal government to do something, and they don't. So then the states take action to enhance the federal law. In other words, they're not going around and they're not circumventing the federal law. To my understanding, I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV or radio, but from all that I've read, Alabama's not attempting to circumvent the law. They're attempting to enhance the enforcement of what's already on the books. And then if a federal court steps in the mix and says, you can't do that, then it hamstrings the states, and we have to accept the ineptness of whatever administration's in office at the federal level. And it's a dilemma. These kinds of dilemmas are what started the Civil War, and I don't want to see that happen again. But these kinds of states' rights, states' issues, dilemmas, and the federal government interjecting or not enforcing is what started that whole mess. And so this is an issue that I'm very passionate about, as you can tell.
Let me ask you this. President Barack Obama has made the statement regarding the Occupy Wall Street movement. He says they're going to have a voice in this next election just as loud as those in the Tea Party. Now, give me your thoughts on this new Occupy Wall Street.
I think when he said that, I think he revealed something. I think he revealed his fear of the Tea Party movement. The Tea Party movement, it's not an official political party.
Right.
It's a movement, a grassroots movement. It was maligned by the media because they feared it. It's moms and dads and grandmoms and granddads. It's black folks, white folks, Oriental folks, females, males, young, old, holding American flags, holding up copies of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, Americana, working people, most of them, people who are invested in our country through the stock market or through businesses or through investment programs, people who think that the Constitution ought to be followed, people who think that the government needs to rein in its crazy spending, it needs to enforce the immigration laws, it needs to develop a more fair tax system. I mean, these are just Americana. And our, by and large, liberal mainstream media is terrified of that. Our current administration seems to be terrified of it. Now, juxtapose that to what's going on at Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street. I know that there are some well-intentioned individuals who have a clear goal in mind as to what they're doing in the Occupy Wall Street. But by and large, when the media has gone down, particularly conservative media that will ask the tough questions and put the cameras in people's faces, they don't know what they're doing. and they don't know why they're there. And I don't want to generalize, well, I'm going to generalize, but forgive me for this, but there seems to be this generalization of I mean, I grew up in the 60s, and I'm saying, oh my gosh, it's deja vu all over again. It's they're defecating on police cars and on the sidewalks. They're laying around not bathing. They're talking about corporate greed. That's what they're against. And I ask the question, what does that mean? Corporate greed? What does that mean? Greed. What do you mean corporate greed? Does that mean getting more than you deserve? Well, who determines that? If you've invested money and started a business and you're making money and people want your product, what difference does it make if you earn a little or if you earn inordinate amounts of money? What difference does it make? I mean, that's what capitalism is. And by the way, gentlemen, I've never worked for a poor person. Have you?
That's right.
I've never worked for a person who's on welfare. Have you? I've always worked for people who have money and who've invested money and who have built a business and who have hired and employed people. And so that's one of the things that has made America great. Now, I do believe that there is a place for government and rules and regulations so that everybody plays fair. I do believe in that. I think American government probably has over-regulated corporate America in some areas. Some areas may be under-regulated. A lot of political favors and those types of things have come into play. But when they're down on Wall Street saying we're against corporate greed, and they're saying we want our debts forgiven, we want jobs. Well, where do you think a job's going to come from? Who's going to forgive your debts? Who's going to pay for that debt if it's forgiven? So they're incoherent. They don't know what they speak. They don't have a clue. And so Nancy Pelosi came out the other day and said, oh, may God bless them. I've never heard her say that about the Tea Party. Obama comes forward and says, well, they're the new voice in America, and they're going to rise up and be a political party. And I don't know this for a fact, but I have read investigative news reports that behind this Occupy Wall Street movement are a lot of the movers and shakers that were behind Obama's rise to stardom. There seems to be a possible connection there.
Well, let me ask you this regarding the...
So I'm sorry I don't have many opinions on that.
Well, regarding the issue of our president.
Yes.
You have serious questions about his citizenship, and you have posted...
Well, as I think every American ought to have. Now, I have so much that I could say about this, so I'm gathering my thoughts.
Sure.
The reason every American should have concerns is because the Congressional Research Service has concerns. Now that, as you gentlemen know, is the investigative arm of Congress. About a year ago, they issued a report. I produced a film on it that went viral. WorldNet Daily did the investigation, the initial investigation. They uncovered these documents that the Congressional Research Service sent to certain congressional offices, not meaning for it to go public. But somebody asked the Congressional Research Service to investigate Obama's vetting process, and they did it, watch this, to try to silence the so-called birthers, those who were asking questions. In other words, they said, well, the Congressional Research Service will investigate this, they'll come up with the evidence, and they will help us to just, thumb our noses at these birthers who are asking these ridiculous questions. Well, the Congressional Research Service, their report came back, and this is a government investigative agency, not a news agency, not some right-wing conservative conspiracy, not some preacher in Northwest Florida. This is the Congressional Research Service. Their document said, you know what? Now I'm going to paraphrase, but this is what they said. Obama has never been vetted by anyone. There has never been proof of citizenship or constitutional eligibility. But here's how they tempered it. They said, however, as of today, now remember, gentlemen, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm promising you what I'm saying is accurate because I've done a lot of investigation, produced a video on it. They said, however, under today's rules and laws, the president doesn't have to be vetted. In other words, there's no official vetting process. It's the Congressional Research Service. So in other words, the vetting process up until now for president has been one of common sense and common knowledge, and I'll explain that in just a moment, and what happens when it gets to the state levels. Common sense, that is, we have a constitution, there's the law, surely no one will try to run who knows they don't meet qualifications. Common knowledge, we know most of the time by the people who become president, we know who they are. We know their whole background. We don't even, have you heard a single one of Obama's past girlfriends come forward and say, I used to date him? We know nothing about this man. And I mean, I know that's a flippant statement to be making now, but
he wouldn't talk even during his campaign.
No,
he wouldn't answer questions.
No, this is what I'm saying. And many people have delved into his back. Jerome Corsi, who wrote the bestseller, Where's the Birth Certificate? #1, New York Times, #1, New York Times, Amazon. He's a personal friend of mine. He's been on my radio show many times. He investigated this man's background to the hilt and came into all kinds of strange things. And even his own book, Dreams of My Father, he admits things that he's now denying. And
who's admitting things?
Well, no, Obama
yeah.
in the book
right.
says things that then later, as these other investigations are going on, he changes them or denies them. But the point I'm making, George and Tom, is that so every American should be concerned because watch. And I can talk about this, about his birth certificate. I can talk about his Social Security number, which did not pass an E-Verify check about 2 months ago. It was kicked back as fraudulent.
His
Social Security number, which is the most famous Social Security number in the world now. I don't know the number off the top of my head,
right.
but it's an 042 dash, but it's posted on the internet, and I've got it in videos and films, and it was run through E-Verify. It was kicked back. Flash, fraudulent number. His number, and this has been reported extensively, Drudge has reported on it, WorldNet Daily, is registered to a man by the name of Harrison J. Bonnell in Chicago. The number that our president is using right now is registered to a man by the name of Harrison J. Bonnell. When you do a check on that, Harrison J. Bonnell is a relative of Michelle Obama, who has the same address of Obama's mansion in Chicago before he became president. Now, there are only a couple of conclusions you can draw from that.
Yeah.
That either he's using someone else's number, which is a federal crime, or he has aliases. The number he's using is kicked back fraudulent in E-Verify, plus it's a number that comes from Connecticut, 042. He has no connections to Connecticut, none. He supposedly got it when he was a teenager living in Hawaii, on the other side of the continent. So, I mean, these issues go on, and so he finally presents a birth certificate. After 2.5 years, listen, gentlemen, of saying that it didn't exist. Not the full one. They had the little short form posted on the internet, and when questioned about it, they said, well, everybody knows that after 2001, the Hawaii Department of State got rid of all those old records, and now they go to the computerized short form. We don't have it. We don't have it. We don't have it. But when Jerome Corsi released his book, that same week, all of a sudden, he magically has one that for 2.5 years they said they didn't have. Now they magically have one, and it's computer generated. But he was born in the 60s.
Yeah.
And the type doesn't match. There's kerning, which is a computer generated type on that birth certificate that was impossible for it to be. And I mean, it goes on and on and on. So the point is, if it turns out that he is unconstitutionally eligible to serve and he knew it and defrauded the American people, we have a mess on our hands, gentlemen.
Yeah. You know what?
But if it turns out that he's perfectly legal, then that's fine, but he has created a firestorm of a mess by all of the secrecy.
Yeah.
So every American should be concerned, and I can talk about this for hours. Tom.
With all the technology we got in the United States, with all the smart people we got, it's hard for me to understand why they can't pinpoint his birth certificate and all that.
I can tell you this, sir. Thank you for saying that. You're absolutely right, Tom. And because of this technology, what we have been able to determine is that the birth certificate he presented to the world as a photocopy of the original, that's what he said, has been testified by a string of experts in the news media that it is fraudulent. There has not been a single computer technology expert who has come forward and said, I've looked at it with my expertise, it is not fraudulent. Not a single one. Now I want to clarify that. There was one gentleman who was a document expert in the recent technology you just talked about, who came forward, who was on Fox News. Fox filmed him, they took snippets, they edited it, they presented him as though he were upholding the birth certificate, but he has now come out on record as being absolutely infuriated with Fox. He said, I did not say that. I did not say. He said, I'm not willing to say it's fraudulent. He said, I won't go that far. He says, but I will say there's some discrepancies and something's wrong with it, and I did not say that that birth certificate was legitimate. So when you eliminate him and the edited version that Fox News put out, there's not a single technology expert, sir,
Carl, we got a couple of minutes
who has
left.
come forward to say that the document is real. Not a single one.
We just got a couple of minutes left. What do? We got an election coming up. We're
Yeah.
looking for change. That's what
Yes.
the last president promised.
Yeah.
So,
But
all those standing up there now running, in your position, who has the best credentials?
You know, I'm afraid you were going to ask me that. I'm not, George, and listen, you know me. I mean, I think you know me now. I'm
Right.
not ashamed or
Right.
to express my
I know.
opinion. But I'm still being very reserved about this. I like right now Herman Cain, and it's not just because today it was announced he's now #1 in the Republican polls, but not because of that. When he first entered the race, see, I listened to him on talk radio for years, so I knew his background. He's a godly man. He's a Constitution-loving man, an American-loving man, an approved businessman. There's a lot about him I like. There are a few things that disturb me. Rick Perry seemed to be for real, but there's some things about his background, and now he's kind of soft on immigration. I don't know. I'm still watching, still vetting. I'm not ready yet to endorse a candidate.
In 30 seconds, tell us what we need to look for when it comes to truth in politics.
What do we need to look for? The character of the person. That's the thing that concerns me the most. We're never going to get a singular candidate that all of America will agree on because we're so different, we're so diverse. But I think we should all be able to agree on character. Character. You know, some honesty and some decency and a respect for our Constitution.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank
Out of
you,
time.
George.
Thank you for coming
Tom.
to see
Thank
us.
you, guys. Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much.
You did a good
Day
job.
on.
Great job.
Day on till
Oh,
next
that's a
month.
yellow dog Democrat.
Thank you.